I think a really interesting starting point, a good question, is that you're obviously a very experienced trader, somebody who's very experienced in the market. You're like fully in now. You're like a proper in there Bitcoiner. It seems to be taking up a lot of your headspace, a lot of your thinking. Yeah, is it a fair observation?
Yeah, and there's two reasons for that, Peter. Firstly, at the simple level, it's massively interesting, right? There's a huge new world being built in front of our eyes, and we didn't really get a chance of doing that in the financial world before, because it was always happening in Silicon Valley or somewhere cool, and we were kind of left out on the side. But this is happening to us. Massive disruption that came out of that white paper and changed the world. And in my macro, guys, it's like no other asset is even close to performing like Bitcoin does. So it's almost, what's the point? And I know you're supposed to have portfolio diversification and all of that stuff, but sometimes when a macro bet is so clear, so big, so obvious, you just got to do it. So I feel guilty because people say, well, can't you write about currencies? I'm like, nothing's really going on. It goes up a few percent, down a few percent. Bitcoin, meanwhile, is up 100%. So that's the reality. And I've talked about this, it's like a supermassive black hole that just sucks in everybody because the performance is so dramatic. And the story and the narrative and the future is optimistic. And most of us in finance are bored of being pessimistic about central banks and pessimistic about governments and manipulation and markets and all of that. And here's a whole new world for us to be optimistic about.
The kind of power shift is starting to happen now, and that we're all becoming independent, but at the same time, as a collective, we have a lot more power. Are you feeling that?
Well, don't forget, we set up Real Vision for this exact reason. We realized that coming out of 2008 and 2012 in Europe, everyone lost faith in the banks, everyone lost faith in financial media. And so it used to be a centralized world where the power to run your money was concentrated in the hands of a few. And we thought about this and thought, this has to change. How can you trust somebody you barely know with your life savings? You have to play a part in it. And that's the democratization of financial intelligence. We thought we need to give the same information, level the playing field for everybody. And Bitcoin is that in a whole asset class. You know, you're dead right. This Wall Street Bets is really about people taking responsibility. They will make mistakes. They will learn things en route. But it's the power of the crowd of people. That's social media now. You know, you and I are on Twitter, not because we just like laughing around on it, but we actually learn. You know, we're there to interact with people and learn. And this is the same thing with Wall Street Bets, and it's the same thing with the Bitcoin community. It's a place that starts with the ground up and not the top down. And that's a huge change and refreshing for all of us.
Yeah, one of the things that I keep thinking about though is, and it goes round and round in my mind, is that do we have an issue that people will constantly think they're too late? And how do we get past that issue? That's probably the more important question. Does that become a problem for people because they keep thinking they've missed out? Is that a conversation you're having with the investors you talk to?
No, because the investors don't look at it in those terms. Price is irrelevant. Okay. That's a retail obsession, right? Penny stocks, they're cheaper. For institutions, it is, what is the adoption? What is the regulation? What is the market cap? So the more it goes up, the more the market cap makes it available for them to purchase.
But it puts me into a position whereby over the next 2-3 years, if I need capital, I'm not going to sell the Bitcoin. I'm going to borrow against that Bitcoin because I don't want to sell it. And it gets this interesting position that as people start to hold the Bitcoin, they start to realize, like, I don't want to let go of this. I can leverage this to borrow. And that's a much better position to be in.
Yeah, but again, if you're an institution and Bitcoin goes up, so let's say it's a 5% weight in your portfolio. Let's say Bitcoin triples. It's now 15% weight in your portfolio. You're now overweighted. What you are actually going to do is sell your Bitcoin. So anybody comes into the market, the price gaps up, then there's a bit of retail leverage that gets stopped out in small sell-offs, but it's quite illiquid at the marginal price. But what's going to happen is these institutions are going to be buying and selling on a monthly and quarterly basis. They'll be buying into dips, they'll be selling into rallies to keep their allocation in line. And what's going to happen is Bitcoin's going to go from this 70 vol beast to 60 volt, to 50 volt, to 40 volt. And you know, if you get to a world where Bitcoin is the reserve asset, then it's going to be a 5 volt.
Is there a risk that people are less excited to invest? Because it is quite exciting right now because you have those high figures where people talk about multiple hundreds of thousands. Do you think psychologically it potentially loses some steam there? What do you think happens at those kind of like $5 trillion market caps?
I can see the community starting to think it through. It started with stacking sats, but it feels a bit awkward and a bit of a forced narrative. We kind of have to explain to people that the price is not, that the headline price, you don't have to buy one of these. It's basically, we just have to explain that to the average person. But again, don't forget, retail is handing the baton on to institutions here. So retail investors will find it hard, and we all want retail participation, not because it drives up prices, but because we truly believe it's the best thing for them to do, to have a chance for their futures to be able to pay off student loans or whatever it may be. So we all passionately believe it has a real place in people's personal portfolios, whoever they are and however little money they've got.
So if someone's listened to this, Raoul, that they've heard your explanation of negative interest rates, they know themselves, they've got to either plan for their future or they are retired and they're worried about the impact on their pension. What should people be doing?
Yeah, so I'll come on to the retirees and people soon to retire. Let's look at everybody else. The thing that you've done and I've done is create an income stream that you're in control of best you can. And if you create two income streams, you're more robust. So you can be your own yield. It's your time. How much yield do I get for my time? Whatever that may be. You could be a hairdresser, or you could be an ex-advertising exec who's decided to go into podcasting and build a business from that, right? But what you're doing is revaluing your time and investing in a new business, getting a return back. Get a few of those, fantastic. So, and then if you're young, or even if you're in your 40s or 50s, Bitcoin has a great value for you. And you don't have to allocate as much crazy amounts of our liquid net worth as you and I have, but to have 10% in and it goes up tenfold, that's 100% increase in your liquid net worth. You're doubling your worth. Okay, that's really powerful. So I think it really has a value, because if you're young, down cycles are a feature. It's not a bug, because you actually want them so you can accumulate more at lower prices, much like you and I did in cycle. So I don't know what to suggest for the older, but maybe DeFi, and when that gets better in the Bitcoin world, as BlockFi are doing, is I could say to mum, you know what, if you stick 100 grand of your pension savings into this, it's going to give you a guaranteed return over time of X%. But giving them a yield again in a negative interest rate world in the UK, yeah, I might tell my mum to do that and say, don't care what happens to Bitcoin. It can go to zero as long as you're getting your yield. So there's some interesting stuff that could develop from here. The problem is the more of the pensioners see that they can get yield again, the more they'll drive down yields, like they've just done to the rest of the world. So all the yields compress, unfortunately, but they've got a chance.